Welcome to the Great Broker Podcast. I'm your host, David Hauk. In each episode, I talk with elite commercial real estate brokers about the deals, decisions, and lessons that define a great career in brokerage. Real brokers, real stories. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Great Broker Podcast. An amazing guest today, my friend Chris Espenshade. Chris, how are you today?
I am great, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're broadcasting today from the Annapolis, Maryland studio overlooking the shores of the Chesapeake Bay. And Chris, you're also in the land of pleasant living up in Baltimore, right?
I am. I split my time, obviously, between our DC office, our Baltimore office, and this morning I'm in my living room office getting ready to get out and, take some meetings.
Chris, let me tell folks a little bit about you. You are vice chairman at Newmark. You lead the Mid-Atlantic Multifamily Capital Markets team. You live in Baltimore, but you cover the whole Mid-Atlantic area. Before that, you spent 9 years at JLL, where you're leading their multifamily platform, a 9-person team. Your early career was at Muni May, JPI, and Archon, which is part of Goldman. You've got over 25 years in commercial real estate, $13 billion over the course of your career. $13 billion. There's a lot of awards here. I'll miss some of them. The Connect CRE Top Broker Award for DC, the Connect CRE Women in Real Estate Award, the Women of Influence multiple times for Real Estate Forum, CoStar's Most Active Broker for a couple of years, Baltimore Magazine's 40 Under 40, Leading Women. You're involved with ULI. Chris, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Chris, how did you get started in this crazy business?
Well, I got started a very, very long time ago, especially in the multifamily space. So my mother actually was in multifamily property management, and my very first real job was leasing apartments in Atlanta, Georgia. For a company that no longer exists in name. It was taken over. It's called Lane Company. And that's what I did. And so that's what I knew. And I just knew apartments. And so after school, I was, offered an opportunity to work at Archon, which was part of Goldman, as they were doing a lot of loan workouts with HUD and creating this very, very large real estate platform with some, various international funds. And that's how I landed kind of in the corporate side of commercial real estate, doing asset management, again, exclusively multifamily. And then after that, I went to work for a developer on the student housing side. So we developed by the bed student housing across the country. And then moved east to work for actually one of the lenders who financed a lot of that student housing. So it was very kind of this linear trek back across to the East Coast. But I've always been in real estate and I've always been in multifamily. And I'd say if there's one thing I could go back and change in kind of my career trajectory would be that I would probably have done a little bit more in other asset classes. I've never had the opportunity to really work with an office portfolio, industrial. And I think that's really important now as you think of new classes of real estate that are becoming the new hot thing, right? Data centers, right? Data centers weren't even a thing 5 years ago. Cold storage, marinas. I mean, these are all asset classes that institutional investors particularly are drawn to that, I think it's important and that I probably should have been able to pivot a little bit more and not solely, focus on one particular asset class.
I think you're doing pretty well with this particular asset class, Chris. I'm just saying. So I'm interested in leasing apartments. Are you doing this in high school or while you were in college? And so you're sitting in the leasing office for lease and renters come in and you go show them a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom? Tell
Yeah,
me
yeah,
about that.
that's how it all started. I mean, this was, a long time ago. So this was in the early 1990s. Things were just a little loosey-goosey, right? It was the same company my mother worked for. They were happy to give me a job, give me a little bit of training. You sit there, you answer the phone, you do the paperwork. That was also at a time that the business was far less sophisticated than it is now, right? You look at now, people who are, leasing apartment communities, they have massive amounts of training. Is prop tech this, they're doing lead generating, they're doing all of these creative things. Really at that time, you were picking up the phone, returning calls, and showing people apartments. It was not rocket science.
Were you doing outbound sales or did the people come to you
No,
because they
people came to
saw a
you.
sign?
I mean, this is, where the business was very antiquated. You literally sat there and waited for people to come in. Just
Mhm.
sat there.
And then if they leased one of those apartments, did you get a commission?
Yeah, I think it's like $50.
Ok, your commissions are larger now, right?
Thank goodness they are. I mean, granted, but depending on the market, I could go back and lease some apartments. But yes, fortunately, the commissions have increased.
It's a good skill set to have, right? You said that you went to school. I know that you went to Princeton.
That
I wonder how many Ivy League graduates there are in the commercial real estate business. Archon is part of Goldman, so it was kind of like you were going to Wall Street, which is where a lot of Ivy Leaguers go.
Yes and no. I mean, the Archon offices were in Dallas, Texas, right? So where they were not in New York. So they definitely kind of put us in the cheap seats, if you will, which was fine. It was a great place to be a young person for sure. More and more Ivy League graduates are going into commercial real estate as the business has gotten more institutional. I graduated college in 1997, so almost 30 years ago. The biggest investment banks didn't have big real estate divisions. There was no Blackstone, BREIT, Starwood was still doing some
Mhm.
hotels, doing some smaller things. So it wasn't something you would have gone, okay, great, I've got a business degree or I've got a degree from this great school. I'm going, directly into this real estate path. That has changed a little bit where people see a direct path to, a long-term career in real estate because there are so many different types. I mean, think about it. It's development, investment, fundraising, property management, brokerage, so many things you can do. And I also think that these businesses have gotten very global. That is very attractive to younger people coming out of school saying, wow, I could go work at a commercial real estate firm and actually look at real estate all over the country. It isn't as much of a local market as moving back to DC. I'm going to only focus on DC real estate. There aren't that many companies who are so micro focused on a location. So I think more and more students are doing that. But certainly when I was graduating, it was law, medicine, investment banking. And, there's actually a group of Princeton alumni in real estate, and we laughed that we were just not smart enough to get real jobs. And so we decided to do this.
Uh, how did you get into Princeton?
By the grace of God, for sure. I was the first person from Cherokee County, Georgia to go to Princeton. I always can tell people that I was their rural Georgia admit because at
Mhm.
that time, Cherokee County was rural and now it's a very nice suburb of Atlanta. And I really got interested in Princeton. My aunt was the swim coach there. And no, I cannot swim. I can swim, but I'm not a swimmer. She was the swim coach there. And just through her, had an opportunity to visit the school many, many times. And the crazy thing is when I went to my high school guidance counselor, and I went to a large public high school, one guidance counselor, 400 kids graduating, and he said, "Okay, you're on the college track. Where do you want to go?" And I said, "I'd like to go to Princeton." And he goes, "That's a terrible idea. Why would you ever do that? You can go to Kennesaw State. It's right down the street. It'll be free. You can live at home. You should do that." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that. I want to apply to Princeton and I'm going to apply to Duke and I'm going to apply to American. I'm going to apply to all these schools and I am going to do that." And he goes, "Well, I wish you luck, but I don't know how to write reference letters for those. So you're going to have to write yours yourself." And I was like, "I am pleased to do that." So I hopefully no one, calls the university and says it, but I definitely had to help Mr. Cox write that letter to get into college. It was a glowing letter, by the way.
And you didn't have ChatGPT to help you write that
No,
letter.
no, I actually had to,
Yeah.
write it all myself.
When did you officially get into brokerage?
I was doing asset management, portfolio management, development, all the other things in real estate. I always touched the deal, but I never did the deal. And in 2008, it was the great financial crisis. I
Mhm.
was working for a large lender, Muni May. We are going through some accounting challenges and we're having to sell off businesses and be very creative. And in my process of selling off some assets in order to raise capital, I reconnected with one of my first bosses ever, a guy by the name of Paul Harris, who's now at Berkadia in Dallas. He was at Moran
Mhm.
and Company at the time, and he was selling a bunch of stuff for us. He's a great broker. He was all over the country. He was kind of our go-to guy, and he called and said, "Hey, you really need to consider brokerage. You really need to do this. Now's the time. We're opening up a DC office. Would you go talk to our DC partner?" Sure, no problem. I go talk to Randall Howard in the DC market, super great guy, have a great conversation. And we're like, hey, let's try this. He had just left East Still to come over to Moran, focus and expand their multifamily practice. And it was a very interesting model. And then at that time, Moran's compensation was salary bonus. And
Mhm,
so that was my biggest concern, as anybody can understand, leaving a job where you get a paycheck every other week, and all
mhm,
of a sudden you're supposed to go into scary brokerage where you just cross your fingers.
mhm,
And
mhm.
especially starting out where you've got to spend time making those contacts. So I leave my every other week paycheck. I go to work at Moran and Company. We do zero deals. And that was not because we're not amazing and great and Randall wasn't fantastic, but it was 2008. But hindsight, this is where luck comes in sometimes. It was not great not doing any deals. However, no one was doing any deals, not
Mhm.
only on the brokerage side, but on the ownership side. And so as we called owners and operators and said, "Hey, it's us. Do you want to have lunch? Do you want to get together? Let's talk about the market." Everybody had time. Every single person said yes to lunch, yes to breakfast, yes to a cup of coffee because nobody was doing anything. There was no development. It was really the market was at a standstill. It was a great opportunity to spend that time meeting everybody in the market.
Were you literally, picking up the phone and smiling and dialing, making cold calls? Because you hadn't done that before in your
Right.
previous roles, right?
No, absolutely. That's exactly what we did. And it was again, Randall had been in the brokerage market for some time with Eastdil, so had many connections. And I knew some people, not many. And it was truly going onto LinkedIn, seeing who knew who, sending the email, making the phone call, getting it set up. And our challenge really at that time was we didn't have any sales, so we didn't really have any great information to offer people,
Mhm.
right? Just other than literally lunch or an opinion or, a coffee. Um, but I think that's where I certainly realized early on that it's a people business and being able to share information with people about something that they were working on or a market that they were looking at is how I built relationships over the next 15 years of being in the brokerage business.
Were you calling on big institutions, or were you, driving around the Washington Beltway and you saw an apartment building and you looked up who owned it and you called that person? Or was
A
it both?
combination of both. Of combination of who knows who or who could make an introduction, and again, I had plenty of contacts in the multifamily space just given my career, and I will tell you, my original analyst class at Archon was probably the most helpful in me growing in the business. So when I went to work at Archon, it was very similar to the Wall Street banking class. You had 30 people come in, X number of people made it, year over year over year. And while there's still one person from our original analyst class at Arcon who happens to lead their multifamily business, everyone else went someplace else. They went to other owners, other operators, other parts of the business. So a lot of the calls that I made to people were warm calls. Hey, gosh, we haven't talked in 3 or 4 years. How are you? This is what I'm doing now. I see that you own something in the market. Let's have a conversation.
Mhm.
Right. And so that was super helpful to have the warm call rather than the pure cold call. But again, when no one's doing anything and you're offering to buy them lunch, people take your cold call.
There aren't many vice chairmen in commercial real estate at Newmark or other major firms.
That is true. I mean, I think there's probably a little bit of title inflation going on around the world, but yes, I agree with you.
What are the, pros and cons, do you think, of being a woman in the commercial real estate business?
I get asked that a lot because there aren't that many of us.
Mhm,
Truly, there are not
mhm,
many who have kind of stuck with it. And it's truly not a business for everyone. I think you've got to have thick skin. And I feel very fortunate that I have always worked with great people. My team is great. The team that I work with at Newmark is the same team from JLL. Newmark's a great company. JLL is a great firm. I've always been able to work with great people. And there are some people that are not great in the business. And at some point, I have learned that you play the long game, karma is real and it's all going to work out. And so there are people that I don't love working with and I don't. There was one situation candidly that it was a client who just screamed at me. I mean, just absolutely kind of screamed at me. He didn't think I called him back fast enough. It was within 24 hours, by the way. And then I just had the luck to say, you know what? You can deal with my partners from now on. And that's been fine. And things have moved on. But I wouldn't say that it's hard to be a woman in the business. You kind of have to get over it. Yes, you're a woman. I don't play a lot of golf. That's okay. And what I've been able to do is I have taken my relationships with many women and done our own thing. I host multiple events for my female clients each year where we don't play golf. We have great dinner, we go to the spa, we do these other things. Unless there are a lot of men who like, "Oh, I wanna do that." I'm like, "Well, you can't, right?
Mhm.
You have your own thing." I have had to pivot a little bit and say, "Not all deals are made on the golf course. I can make my deals in a different way."
Mm. What percentage of your clients' decision makers are women, would you say?
10%?
Okay. That might reflect the number of female brokers as well, right?
Right. Absolutely. The ratio is, probably about the same. And I would say in commercial real estate, you tend to see women gravitate towards asset management and property management rather
Mm,
than maybe the deal making side or the fundraising side. Fortunately, a lot of decision makers about like who they go with, which broker they're going to choose to sell a deal are in the asset management group. So there's, probably skews a little heavier in that regard, but there are very, very few women in the business. And you see that, at all the industry conferences. We laugh and say, oh, it's the sea of blue blazers, it's the sea of, the black vest. And I would have thought it would have changed more. And I'd say it's incrementally changed, but not by as much as it certainly could have.
What can or should the industry as a whole do to get more women involved and to support their careers?
Well, I mean, I think on the brokerage side, it really comes down to compensation, right? And it's very hard, I think, for women to go into a role where it is purely commission based. And if you don't win the deal and if the deal doesn't close, you don't get paid. I think the other challenge as women are coming up into the business, you think about brokerage as a pyramid. Lots of people start on the bottom and everybody wants to get to the top. It's
Mhm,
very, very difficult to do because that really just happens when people retire, right? There's not the natural progression because at some point, you know, you're Dave, you're not going anywhere. You've got the biggest leases in the market. You're sticking around. And those younger people get very frustrated when their commissions and their splits aren't very good, and we've all been there where
mhm,
you're like, "Great, I worked so hard on this deal. I did all the work." And you sit down and talk about your fee and you're like, "Oh, I'm only getting 10% of this?"
mhm,
Right? And those young people are like, "But I did the execution and I did this." But the person at the top's like, "Yeah, but they picked us because of me." And so I think that's where candidly, a lot of women had said, "Screw this. I'm gonna go do something else."
mm.
And I think there are men who've been a little more willing to just stick it out, switch to another firm, or go fight with someone about a fee. And I think that's probably one of the things that I've appreciated in my partnership with my colleagues. Our fees are the same. There's never a conversation about commission. Period. End of story. And that's I think helped us be successful because it's helped us grow our business and not worry about the last dollar.
How do you mentor aspiring vice chairman in our business?
One of the things I tell people all the time is you've got to be in this for the long game. You are not going to get every deal. You are not going to be everyone's favorite. Even if you took someone to play golf or to the spa or to dinner, be there for the long game. Always give people the best advice. Everyone says, "Gosh, I can't believe you just told that person it wasn't time to sell their building." And my response is, "I did because it's not the right time to sell their building."
Mhm,
Right? So maybe they'll sell it next year and it's going to be worth more to them. They're going to make more money and we're going to make more money because they're going to pick us for telling them the right thing to do.
mhm.
And I think that's very, very hard for young brokers to do is to actually say, what is the actual best thing for my client and this deal rather than how can I make the most money and get this closed? Those are two very different conversations.
Who were your mentors when you started off in brokerage, and what's the best advice they gave you?
So when I started off in brokerage, I started at Moran. I was only there for a year before I ran into a longtime friend at a conference who said, "I didn't even know you were in brokerage. You have to come work at JLL," and that's how that transpired.
Mhm,
Oh, and that was Jabeen Vigeffi, who's still in the business. We had a pitch that a very big institutional client in New York City on Park Avenue, and it was a $160 million deal. And I was on a team where I was not the senior person at the time, and we got the call that they wanted us to come in and pitch this building. It was in Virginia, $162 million. And the potential client said, "But I want Chris Espenshade to be the lead. I don't want the other people on her team there because I think she does all the work. She's the person." Well, that's a pretty
mhm,
complicated, conversation to have. So Jabeen was fantastic and said, Don't worry about it. I got it. You're the junior person on the team. I'll make sure it's all fine." Because the most important thing, the client just said this. We're doing what the client said. So we go up to New York. I am incredibly nervous. I'm like, what am I doing here? And big tower on Park Avenue. Jabine's with me. I think we have an analyst with us too. Go through the pitch. It's a great pitch. We know everything. We have plans. We have this. We have that. We have everything else. 2 days later, we get the call. Congratulations, you won the deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is life changing.
Mhm.
Huge institutional client. Boy, JLL is going to be so happy. This is incredible. And then their caveat was, you're getting the deal. Only your name can be on the book. Only you can do the tours.
Just you.
Yep.
What do your colleagues think about that?
Not much. But again, did the right thing. This is what the client wanted. We figured it out. It was all done. And I think that's where, again, it was the right thing to do for JLL. And it was the right thing to do for the client to say, this is what you want. This is what we're going to do. Ultimately, the client was very happy. The deal closed. We had a nice steak dinner. Everyone moved on. But I think that was really the point, too, that because that happened and because, real honestly, somebody had my back, that I think I had the confidence to say, okay, I really can do this.
Mm.
It's if you just do what you're supposed to do the research, know what you're talking about, be well prepared, you're going to win the business.
Tell me about the multifamily business in general. Do you think it's the best asset class?
Yeah, absolutely, it's the best asset class. Everyone should buy everything. Yes, it's an interesting asset class because it's really kind of the mix of an operating business like a hotel and traditional commercial real estate like an office building. Like you've got people that you literally, from an owner's perspective, these are people's homes. And while they
Mhm.
may not own them, they're only staying there for a period of time. They are giving you the largest part of their income to live there. It's a unique business in that respect, and I think that good operators and good owners acknowledge that. These are people's homes. So it's fascinating in that way. It's interesting to see the evolution, urban's in, suburban's in, micro units are in, co-living is in. Newsflash, co-living is out. It's been interesting to see that evolution. So the region that I cover, the Mid-Atlantic, has also been hit really, really hard with regulatory restrictions. And to see the immediate impact financially that has had not only on our clients, but really on the business overall, where investors are far less likely to invest in high regulatory areas. This is not a surprise to anyone.
Mhm.
But that means values have fallen. You've got all these other restrictions you've got to do. I've had to spend a lot of time coaching and counseling some clients through the market has changed. When you bought this building in Montgomery County 5 years ago, belle of the ball, Montgomery County, high growth, amazing, amazing, amazing. Well, rent control came into reality 2 years ago. Your cap rates just expanded 200 basis points. You underwrote that you're going to do all this stuff and improve the units and exit at a certain cap rate. That's all changed. And not because anything that the owner did. It was purely out of the blue rent control legislations. And we're seeing that more and more across the country. So I think we've seen a little bit, institutions be a little more wary of going into certain locations for that investment. So I think multifamily is super interesting. I think it's more interesting than data centers right now because I think data centers about to kind of hit the regulatory wave that's going through multifamily. You see it in legislation across the country where all of a sudden the state of Maine was considering banning all data centers,
Right.
right? And it vetoed and so on and so forth. So, but it's something that because real estate has gotten so high profile, it isn't just ma and pa own a few buildings here or there. It's going to increasingly get regulatory scrutiny, and that's going to be data centers, multifamily. You see it in office buildings with LEED certifications and energy certifications. I love multifamily, but it's actually been interesting to kind of watch evolution of multiple, asset classes over the last few years.
What about the DC market? Uncertainty with the federal government, is that fair?
It is it is fair and unfair. We have the privilege of being in the Mid-Atlantic market, and we actually see the impact of all the changes that happen. It is true that 136,000 jobs were lost in the DC market. Many of those people were just actually retired. These are people who they've owned their homes for ages. They're like, I'm not dealing with this mess anymore. I'm not getting on the metro. I'm 65 years old. I'm retiring. So a lot of those jobs were people who retired and then they just were never refilled. So I think there's been more headline noise about DC and Doge and the federal government closure than we've actually seen impact. Fundamentally, DC is one of the strongest multifamily markets in the US. And that really is because we have no supply coming, right? So you have all the supply in the Sun Belt markets and these other very popular COVID relocation destinations. DC did not have all of that, and it's also very difficult to develop in the DC metro. So more what people call them kind of pro-growth locations. We'll pick on South Carolina. You see a piece of dirt, you want to put an apartment community there, you build it. You do that same thing in Northern Virginia, DC, or most of Maryland. That's a 2-year process to get the
Mhm.
entitlements, and you've got to do this and so on and so forth. Plus, you've got to raise the capital. So we're in almost a zero supply game right now, and that's going to continue for the next 3 to 5 years. There are a couple pockets in Northern Virginia where you're seeing some more supply pop up. So you're already seeing rent growth go in the right direction in DC. So I think it's going to turn around, and DC is going to be more highly sought out by investors, because the actual fundamentals of rent growth and occupancy are in place.
Who are your clients, and are they generally repeat buyers or sellers, or are you typically dealing with more one-off, clients?
Candidly, there are so few one-off clients left anymore. The world has gotten very institutional, and not just institutional from a Wall Street perspective and, the biggest of big, but there's so many funds that have gone out and raised 300, $400 million that own real estate. I mean, my clients are the biggest banks. They are publicly traded REITs. They are families. Right now, we're working for on behalf of a trust for an individual who owned one building in Washington, D.C. It just happens to be a $200 million building. We have a lot of repeat clients for sure. So I'm very, very thankful for that, that those are people who've trusted me and my team multiple times to represent them. And I would say most of our sellers are repeat sellers, but I'm very excited. We're getting a lot of new buyers to the market. And we've seen a lot of private capital come in and a lot of family offices. And so we'll see, the family office, they're tremendous buyers. They have unlimited capital seemingly at their disposal, but those are also owners that tend not to sell very frequently. They're coming
Mhm,
in and thinking, I'm going to own something generationally. And of course, in my business, we love it when people sell things every 3 to 5 years and kind of just keep,
mhm.
keep turning it. So that's going to be a little bit of a shift I think we see in the market in the next few years.
And are you helping clients on the buy side as well, or, or just on the sales side?
I typically work on the sales side. I think the buy side's a little it's candidly, it's harder to do because you're going back to your cold calling days and saying, "Hey, I have someone, send me your information. We'll see if it works," when you don't really have an idea if there's a motivation to sell or if it's financially feasible. You're kind of going and asking somebody, "Hey, I think this is a good idea, but I have no data to show that it's a good idea." So candidly, it's a lot more work too.
Do you run into situations where you have a client like that one on Park Avenue that says, "Hey, Chris, we love what you've done for us in the Mid-Atlantic. I want you to sell my building in Chicago or Los Angeles."
I don't run into that, and candidly, and most large brokerage firms are set up this way, where we're really focused geographically. And fortunately, at Newmark, and I could say this at the firms that I've worked at previously, I have great colleagues across the country. And so, if somebody called and said, "I have a building in Chicago, can you help me?" I'd say, "No, you know what? I can't help you, but boy, do I know someone who can." And also a female. She's amazing. So let me make this introduction for you. This is going to work out well. You're in good hands. Good luck. Um,
How do you balance being a top broker, vice chairman, and being a mom? Tell me about your family.
I have 2 amazing kids, both D1 college athletes, which is actually the most amazing thing about it because I'm, 5'2" and not athletic at all. My husband is much taller, but also a scientist, so generally not athletic. I think the key in anybody, in any, whether it's real estate or corporate life or whatever your profession is, you've got to pick a great spouse. You have to have someone
Mhm,
there to be like, I got it, not a problem. You have a dinner tonight? I can get someone to baseball practice. I can do this. It's not a big deal. Because I do think that there are people who struggle. Partly, sometimes it's who they marry, and sometimes it's self-imposed on they think they have to do it all rather than, "Nope, I have a great partner here. My husband's gonna be able to take care of this because I need to go to a 2-day meeting." Um, so and I do when I speak a lot of times at women's events, people ask, like, "How do you do it all?" First of all, like, there is no such thing as doing it all. That is couldn't be more of a myth. And I also think that, and I think a lot of women put this on themselves, that everything has to be perfect. that you've got to have the perfect birthday party and dinner has to be amazing and your vacations have to be all of these things and your Christmas decorations have to be magazine worthy. No one has actually ever said that to anyone. So I always tell people like, relax. Like when everyone's totally stressed out about, oh my gosh, I've got to get home and I've got to make dinner. I'm like, you know what's really good for dinner? Dominoes, right? Or pancakes. But I do think that a lot of us, and I think it's high achieving women, that we've put it on ourselves that we've got to be Martha Stewart plus this, plus this, plus this. When A, hopefully you have a great partner who can support you, and B, sometimes you just got to let it go. Um, and candidly, there are things in life you can outsource. And when you get to a certain point in your career, outsource it.
Good advice. You give back to your community, to your alma mater. You've been the Princeton class agent for
Yes.
the past couple of reunions.
Yep. It's
So,
sales. Yeah.
ho
I ask
how
people for a lot of
yeah,
money.
yeah. Is it easier to ask investors for 100 or $200 million to buy an apartment building, or is it easier to ask your classmates and friends for big chunks of change?
If you believe in it, it's easy to ask, right? I do a lot of fundraising. For Princeton, for my 25th reunion, we raised over $10 million for our class. 30th is underway. I'm finishing the campaign for my daughter's school, Bryn Mawr in Baltimore, raising
Mhm.
$25 million for a new science building. We're at 21.1. And I think what it comes down to is if you really believe in what you're doing, selling the building, building a new building at Bryn Mawr, raising money for Princeton and providing a great education, supporting the library, it's very easy to ask. And I tell people who are like, oh gosh, I don't know how you ask for money. The worst thing that someone could say is no. Literally, that is the worst thing someone could say is no, because they already took the meeting, right? They know why you're calling to sell the building or to ask for money. So they have something in common with you. And if it doesn't work for them, you move on, you made a connection, and people appreciate your passion for it. It's been great. And I think that it's also people, real estate people, business people get so wrapped up in the deal. Everyone's all fired up. There's a retrade here and somebody didn't do this. Having a little bit of perspective about the state of the world and philanthropy and doing things outside of business, I do think help keeps everything in check. It's just a deal. We're not curing cancer. We are not solving the world's problems. We are not creating world peace. The deal will get done if you just work at it and do the right thing.
Yes, you do get good at rejection in the commercial
Oh,
real estate
sure.
brokerage business.
Yes, it's like having someone break up with you every day. And actually, it's interesting. My kids in their college recruiting process, that's what I equated it to. You're going through the recruiting process. You have this great relationship with a coach. You're texting, you're calling, and all of a sudden they ghost you. And it creates good humility for people.
If there are office or industrial brokers out there, junior brokers, and they're thinking about, well, gosh, maybe I should get into capital markets. Maybe I should try to sell apartment buildings instead. What's your advice?
I would say the first thing to do is look at your competitive landscape. How many other people are doing that in your sphere? Because one of the things about capital markets, certainly in the structure, if you're the person selling the building, not on the finance side, that's a whole different kind of part of the business. Um, there are a finite number of buildings to sell. And so you really have to look and say, so like in I think I forget the number in the DC market, there are 1,500 apartment buildings. I think that's out. Actually, there are about 2,000 apartment buildings in the DC metro, right? And so when you kind of look at that and say, okay, there are 2,000 opportunities to sell, right? How many other people am I competing against to sell those buildings? Is this math going to work out for me? The DC market for multifamily investment sales, the heaviest brokered market in the country. All 10 major flag brokerage firms have an office in Washington, DC. And so you know that the competition here is tougher than it's going to be in some other markets. And so, unlike maybe leasing or tenant rep, where you feel like, oh, there always might be new companies coming into the market. There might always be someone moving in. I'm always going to be able to, renegotiate these leases or do whatever. That's what I think people have to evaluate is truly what is the market and what is my competition? Because
Mhm.
the kind of the
W-
days of sitting down and just, okay, here's the list of owners I'm going to start calling, that's going to be tougher.
And I know you've been around retail brokers and office brokers at big firms. What what skills, are transferable, and what skills do you think an office or industrial broker would have to learn to do multifamily?
The number one key is truly the capital markets because people kind of, like, oh yeah, you just like, I think that building's worth $100 million. Like, well, why is that? Right? Did you do the analysis? Did you actually do the math? Right?
Mhm.
It's not hard math, but it is math. If you can do basic math, you can do real estate brokerage. Truly, what is the building worth and why? Um, but I think the most important thing is really understanding your client. So if you think you're gonna make the pivot, it's fine. I mean, again, we're selling widgets. You can sell a widget, you can sell a car, you can sell an apartment building. But do you have a good relationship with your client? Do they trust you? And are you doing the right thing for them? And do you really know how to advise them versus just, yeah, 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 I can sell that for you, sure. Hope is not a business plan. You got to have a business plan.
What if you went into office leasing, Chris? What would be the hardest part for you to lease some office space?
Oh my god, I wouldn't even know where to start. Yeah, I'd probably pick a different market than DC, candidly. Maybe San Francisco right now or New York. I think it would honestly be, obviously, in that situation, you know who the owner is, but how do you really identify who your prospects are? That's probably something that I would struggle with the most. How do I make sure that the right groups are coming in to see this that fit within the building and within my owner's business plan? Because if this owner is like, hey, let's fill this up because I'm selling it and I need my walt to be this, that's the other thing. It isn't just putting someone in the space.
Mhm. If you were not a broker, what would you be doing?
Wow. Do I make the same amount of money?
I don't know.
If I could make the same amount of money or money was not an issue, I would run a nonprofit.
Okay. What kind of nonprofit?
I have so many interests. I love my library. I love an art museum. And now the world is shifting more to have actually executives run those organizations and have creative people do the creative stuff. I would maybe do something in women's health. If I didn't have to worry, if I could have the same lifestyle, that's what I would do.
What do you when people say Chris is a great broker, what do you hope they mean?
I hope they know that I'm looking out for them and that I'm working really hard and I'm doing what is in their best interest. And I hope they like working with me. This is a people business. You've got to like the people you work with. You don't always have to be friendly and you don't always have to disagree, but you have to respect them and you really have to enjoy that time together.
Tell me about some of your habits. Are you an early riser? Are you a night owl? What's a day in the life?
I'm hyper organized, hyper organized. I'm a little on the early side, not super early, like 6 ish. And I'm 11 p.m. to bed. I kind of use all of my day. I try to get outside at least 20 plus minutes a day and
Mhm.
just be by myself. That's the beauty of having a dog. The dog walk is my kind of just clear your mind kind of time. And I have a lot of friends. I'm a very social person, and I think that that is the key also to creating balance in your life is having other people around. And none of my closest friends are in real estate. They all do other things. And so we rarely talk about work. And that I think is a very healthy balance that I've been able to achieve.
What would your clients be surprised to learn about you?
I watch a lot of reality TV on Bravo.
What's your favorite reality TV show?
The Real Housewives of New York.
Very good. Coffee or cocktails with clients?
Mostly cocktails with clients.
What's one piece of advice that you want every listener, especially the young brokers out there, to take away from this conversation?
Be in it for the long game. You are not gonna have every single year be a success, and there are gonna be some years that are really lean. We've all been there. I remember there was a time, you might remember draw sheets, right? And we actually had draws, and you would get a little bit of money every other week, and then you did make commissions. At one point, I had negative $185,000 on my draw sheet. And I was like, wow, this is really bad. I owe this company a lot of money. Um,
Did you tell your husband?
oh, yeah. Yeah. We talked about it and we're like, okay, it was going to do this. And it was about the time that things were starting to kind of pick up. And I had a conversation with the leadership and I said, would it be possible that for any commissions that come in, I get half in cash and half goes to the draw? And they said, not a problem. We see your pipeline. We know this is going to work out. And it did. But it was really scary. And I would say the other piece of advice I have is we are very conservative financially in my family because of
Mhm.
the way that money ebbs and flows. We don't have a boat, we don't have 3 houses, we don't have all the things, so even in the lean years, everything is fine. And so that's the other piece of advice I would give to people is it's really tempting on those big years to be like, "Oh, it's always gonna be like this, we're buying the second house." Just wait, just wait.
Well, you've got 2 kids in college, so, you gotta get through that, right?
Got it. Well, they're doing athletes, right? I mean, I spent $1,000,000 kind of getting them to college in their respective sports, field hockey and golf, but they've taken care of themselves.
That's wonderful. Chris, you've been a fantastic guest. I really appreciate you appearing on the Great Broker podcast.
Thank you. This was so much fun. Always great to see you and honored to be part of it.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for listening to the Great Broker podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, follow the show and share it with someone who wants to become a great broker. See you next time.